You're watching Salina Media Connection. 3 officials from Northwest Kansas gave a presentation about the value of connecting community organizations to improve early childhood programs. The presentation took place November 18, 2019, during the Intersections of Faith and Health Conference hosted by the United Methodist Health Ministry Fund. The presenters were Colby Community Volunteer Donna Henry, Colby Public Schools Readiness Coordinator Julie Ross, and Livewell Northwest Kansas Executive Director Travis Rickford. The following program lasts about an hour.
I think this will be a really good panel. This one specifically was one I probably, it was my fault. In the sense of, I think when I say that, I'm saying there's a part of this that we've been hearing a lot about. I grew up in Colby, so I know a few of these people. Some of them better than others. But also, it was one of the pieces where early childhood development, we have a grant that we work with Livewell Northwest Kansas. We also have been working with the Colby United Methodist Church as well. I do know a little bit about what's happening within the public schools. This is my mom, by the way. So I hear a little bit about what they're doing in the early childhood space, and especially just a lot of different components. So I thought it would be really interesting to hear about how all of these are overlapping, how each part is playing a significant role in trying to support early childhood development. We know that those first 5 years are the most critical parts of a child's life, and it's not just the child, right? It's the family, how we're supporting them. We know that it's not just that they have education, that they have a safe place to be, that they have parents that are capable of taking care of them, and also that their parents feel supported in them. So why I wanted to have you guys listen to them is just to hear about what some of the great things that they're doing in the community. I think that this will hopefully give you some ideas, I think, about maybe new ways of looking at things or ideas of how to partner. Right? I think there's always room for that, and making sure that we're collaborating and looking across different denominations, and we're also using our roles within our own jobs to then also fuel that passion for the ministry that we wanted to also accomplish. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. I should introduce each of them as I was saying the organization. So Travis Rickford is Executive Director for the Livewell Northwest Kansas group. They have been working with us, I know since I worked at the Health Fund since 2011 that we've been working specifically on early childhood initiatives around this. Donna Henry is with, as I mentioned, the Colby United Methodist Church. They have a health congregations team that has been very strong for a number of years and doing a number of different ministry programs that tie directly with the early childhood component. And then Julie Ross, she's with the Colby Public Schools and is the early childhood, what do you call this now? Pre-K Readiness Director. So, did I get it close?
Close enough.
Okay. Having come from United Methodist Health Ministry Fund, I know how trying to get all of those words, no one ever gets our Anyways, I'm going to turn it over to them for the rest of the session. Thank you guys again for participating today.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for having us here today. I was telling Donna earlier at lunch, it feels like where we started out this morning with the plenary and listening to the presentations this afternoon, it really connects well with what we're about to talk about. And really this presentation is a success story about partnerships. This was something that I would say really happened organically over the course of the last year. A lot of our programs intersected with each other, which fits in well with the theme of this conference. So we're here to talk about that and those successes and lessons learned. So for now, we're going to kind of build on each success and at the end we'll tie it all together. So Donna, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. Hi everybody. You guys have probably heard the saying that there are people you shouldn't give a microphone to, and I may or may not be one of those persons. I retired from secondary English and journalism education about a year and 3 months ago, so I haven't had a captive audience. Anyway, so to give you a roadmap of what I'm going to talk to you about, is the Healthy Congregations and Colby United Methodist Church, and 3 things that we've been partners in that have helped early childhood and related fields. The first one I'm going to talk to you about is the community garden. And so these are just some pictures of some of the produce that we had. Now the community garden at Colby was not always an initiative of the Healthy Congregations. It was around for several years. In fact, I think the first one was Thomas County Coalition, which is a precursor to Livewell, what Travis works for. And it was hosted in various locations around Colby. And then 2 years ago, the Healthy Congregations took over the garden, and we moved it to the south portion of our acreage there in Colby. We intentionally put it on the outside of the parking lot so that people could access it from either street that we're on, to make it a little more accessible so that people didn't feel like they had to come into our property, because we did want it to be a community garden. When we first started, we went just the basic vegetables that we did, and then we have added to that. We've done herbs, and this year we added I think we had 7 varieties of tomatoes, because people said, well, I like to use them for canning, I like to use these for salads or whatever, so we tried to increase that. We added herbs and different kinds of peppers, some bell peppers, some hot peppers. We added strawberries this year, and then we also did leeks and radishes, carrots. And then we had the usual suspects too, just squash and cucumbers and all of that. One way that we tried to tie it into education was we have a kids program at our church that runs for 7 weeks in the summer. And it's for the entire community, and they can sign up for hands-on classes 4 days a week. And so we had, okay, I have to tell you about these 2 little girls. Go back to the previous one. Okay, there's 2 little girls. How many of you have been to the Big Garden in Omaha? Has anyone been to the Big Garden in Omaha? Okay, I didn't get to go, but several members of our congregation, of our committee, went to that, and they saw this herb spiral that was built out of bricks, and so they came back and said, we have to do this. So we did our portion of it, and these 2 little girls and their mom built our brick spiral, but we planted it to strawberries, which was another thing we did this year to try to encourage some more people to take advantage of it. So anyway, to go back to what we did, we did a gardening class during the kids program. And so we have, down the street from our church is a low-income housing apartment development. And we had several kids in our class that were from those apartments. And this was really cool for them because they don't have the accessibility to a garden plot. And so we tried to go outside every day and actually do something in the garden, so they got to dig in the soil and all of that. So one day we talked about beneficial flowers to have around the garden. And so they planted zinnias and marigolds. And then the next day we talked about worms. They loved that. And we actually brought earthworms, and we talked about how they aerate the soil and help everything grow better. And the kids put the worms in the soil and got to watch how quickly it took them to burrow down into the soil. And then we went in and made dirt cups with gummy worms, which they loved. Another day we talked about beneficial insects. And so they went outside and we tried to find insects and identify what they were, if they were beneficial or not. Then we went back inside and we made tic-tac-toe boards, and the little rocks that we painted, instead of X's and O's, we did ladybugs or bumblebees. And so it's just a way to help them learn about the garden. And we had children from age 4 to age 10 in our classes. So, and it was really well received. So we're planning to do that again next summer. We do experience some challenges with our community garden. I don't know how many of you have. How many of you have community gardens in your community? Okay, quite a few. We have a new one that I think Travis is going to talk about that's a plot garden that has nothing to do with this one. But our community garden, what our challenge is getting community members to feel like they can come and harvest the produce. I think a lot of them feel that if they don't plant it, then they shouldn't harvest it. And so we tried, we have open planting days where we encourage people to come and plant. We've had pick the garden nights. We thought, well, maybe they're not coming because they're not sure how to cut basil. Maybe they've never had basil. So we've had instructional events in the evenings where we've said, we will be here and we'll help you harvest. But we have mostly committee members and congregation members that utilize it with an occasional community member. In fact, this was kind of funny. One day in August, I was coming into the church. I'm also youth director at the church, and I was going to go work on the youth room. And as I'm driving in, I look over to the garden, and there's our custodian out there with a big sack, and she's planting. I'm thinking, hey, somebody's planting the garden, or picking the garden. So I go in, and I'm working in my room, and pretty soon, Poppy, our custodian, comes down, and she says, Donna, I'm just not picking for me. That wasn't just my stuff I was picking. I said, Poppy, I don't care who you're picking for. I'm thrilled that someone is picking. And she said, well, I'm also picking for Kim and Carrie. They're two ladies that work in our front office. And I said, honestly, you can pick every day. It doesn't matter. Anyone can pick. Anyone from the community or the congregation. But she felt guilty because she felt like she was taking something that she shouldn't. So a couple of things we're looking at, and maybe some of you who have gardens who have had success, we have started a neighboring initiative, like a lot of United Methodist churches have. And so we have a trailer park that's catty corner from our property, and then we have the low housing apartments. And so we are doing other activities with them, but we're also going to try to personally invite them and figure out a way to get them personally invested in the garden so that it is utilized more by the community. And so everyone, from little children all the way up to elderly, can benefit from it. Okay? So that's one example of ways that we try to intersect the faith and the community. The second one is our quarterly cooking classes. And this also came out of Healthy Congregations. The way this came up was we were trying to think, okay, what can we do? We all like to cook, and we thought, how can we get people involved in healthy eating and the socialization of cooking together like families do? And so we were planning to do these quarterly cooking classes. And one day, another Healthy Congregations member and I are both board members of our Genesis Food Bank. And we were at a subcommittee meeting. And we were just talking as we were working on a project. And another gal who's on our committee says, you know what, guys? There are so many people that eat out almost every meal. Can you imagine that? I mean, I eat out maybe once a week. How many times do you guys eat out? So everyone's talking about this, and sitting right beside me is a single mom, young mom. And she sits there a minute, she says, you know what, guys, I'm one of those people. We eat out almost every day. I have 2 kids. I work 3 jobs. I've never really learned how to cook healthy. So I just pick my kids up from school, and before I go drop them off, before I go to my second job, we go to Love's and get a sandwich, or we go to Casey's and get a pizza. And so from that discussion, the Healthy Congregations member and I went back to our committee and we said, can we make our target audience single parents so that children are getting more healthy food and the family is benefiting from this? So that's our target audience. So we're doing these classes quarterly. So we did one in September, which is the one that's here. We had 9 participants. We tried to use ingredients from our garden. So we made pesto pasta using basil from our garden. And we had vegetable packets that we put in an aluminum foil packet. And we used veggies from our garden. And then we made berry parfaits. We used some of our strawberries, which our strawberries this year were this big. As you know, the first year you have strawberries, they're just so tiny, but they're so good. And then we added in other berries from the grocery store as well. And our intention was to have our single parents around the island there in the kitchen, which you can see there. And we thought, well, maybe a lot of them don't know how to cook. They don't even know how to chop up a carrot or how to core a strawberry. So we wanted it to be very instructional, but kind of like a cooking show where we teach them, they do it, so they learn by doing. We actually make the food together. And then we wanted to sit down and eat together, which I think is on the next slide. So we sat down as a family to sit down and eat together. And then we intentionally bought double ingredients, so we had leftovers we could send home with them for their families, and also recipe cards for all the healthy recipes that we had fixed. Okay, this sounds so great, doesn't it? Of our 10 people that were there, how many do you think were single parents? One single parent. And we congratulate ourselves, we said we could have had 0 single parents. Most of the people that were there were older women who just like to cook. And some of them are single women who really enjoyed the fellowship of coming and cooking. And we did have one gentleman who said he's cooked some, but not a lot. But one reason we wanted to do the single parent, and we wanted to do the table, sitting around the table like a family, was we were hoping to establish some connections. We wanted a network so that if we ran into those single parents at Dillon's or Walmart, and one of them could come up to us and say, hey, I got this roast on sale. What's a healthy way that I can fix it? We wanted to establish that dialogue, that community. So we're going to work on that, okay? We have another one coming up in this week, on Thursday. We're doing holiday cooking. So we're doing chicken cordon bleu in a microwave, festive tossed salad, candied sweet potatoes, but to sweeten them, we're not using sugar, we're using fresh pineapple, and then mocha fondue with fresh strawberries. And I called this morning as I was driving from Colby. By the way, Colby is clear on the western edge. I always have to make sure people know where Colby is. It's the only Starbucks that you can stop at on your way to Denver. That's everything that way. And so as I was driving, I called the church office and I said, how many do we have signed up? And she said, we're at 6 right now, and I had 3 that had told me after church yesterday, so we added those. So looks like we're going to be at about the same number, but of the 9 right now, how many are single parents, do you think? 1. So we have some work to do. I did talk to the gal who's on the Thomas County Genesis Food Board committee with me, because I had personally invited her and one of her friends that works at her same workplace, and neither one of them came the first time, and neither one of them has signed up yet for this time. So I talked to her at a committee meeting last week, and she said, I wanted to come, but I was working. And so I said, okay, would a different time work better? She said, maybe a weekend afternoon, maybe a Saturday afternoon, or a Sunday afternoon. So we have a committee meeting tomorrow night, and that's something I'm going to propose, that maybe the one we do in January, February, we try it on a weekend afternoon, where maybe there will be more apt to come. But that's our goal, is to get some more single parents, so that those they're learning the skills, and also fixing healthy meals, and then establishing that dialogue, establishing a community with us. And the third thing that we did was our summer diner. And this was by no means something that came out of Healthy Congregations. This was something they started 3 years ago. It's 12 weeks free kids lunch program in the summer. And it's housed at our church because 3 years ago, when they were looking for a place to house, because of the low-income housing apartments that are down the street from us, our area was, we were considered a poverty center, and so we could host it. That's how our church came to host it. And then Healthy Congregations helped to supply funding, and then also manpower to serve, help set up and serve and clean up. When we started 3 years ago, we had shelf-stable food, which is food that you don't heat up. And it wasn't very popular, so it didn't go over very well. But we've changed it through the years. And so it was really successful this last year. But besides the church, Colby Public Schools is involved in it. Thomas County Health Department. There's a nonprofit group out of Lawrence that helps us. And then Julie had, this year she had her early childhood grant that she brought activities to. And I'll let her talk about that here in just a minute. So we had lots of people. Also, we had a local dairy. McCarty Dairy provided yogurt for us all year long, all summer long. We had volunteers who helped set up and serve and clean up from all over the community, not just our church. Our community garden provided produce. The other community garden provided produce, and local people provided produce. So it was a really good example of connections and people working together for a common good, for a common goal. So I started telling you guys about, first year we had maybe, I didn't help serve that year, so I'm trying to remember. I would think we had about an average of 5 children a day was all. Then the second year, which was year before last, we added fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, and our healthy congregations provided that. We also did a adult salad. So if an adult brought their children in to eat, they also were able to eat for free. And it was a really good salad with protein and veggies, and it was really a good salad. And then this year, because Colby Public Schools were going to have a summer school, it's the first year they've had a summer school in our elementary and intermediate building for several years. They said, you know, because we were partnering with them, and they said, you know what, why don't we try a hot meal? So that, I think, made a big difference. And so we had lots more children. I'll show you some numbers, how that really increased. It was very, very successful. But I think it's a really good example of partnering and everything. Julie, do you want to tell me a little bit about your activities that you did with that? And then I'll come back and show you my last slide, which is the numbers.
So with the Early Childhood Initiative, one of the things that we wanted to do was provide an opportunity for those kiddos and their parents to just watch somebody read and do interactive activities. And so I asked teachers to send out a calendar and said, what day can you come and help, and on another day do a fun outdoor activity. And so we added that in there, and the kids certainly enjoyed it. The bad thing was that the parents stayed outside and socialized with the other parents rather than we kind of went into a little room to do that, where we had a little bit of a closed off area. So that wasn't as the intention behind why I wanted to do it, to help those parents to get some good skills behind them on how you engage children in reading, and questions that you can ask, and extended activities that you can do with it. Didn't fly as high as I had wanted to, but we still had, like I said, the kids enjoyed it, and the parents enjoyed time away from their kids. So it served that purpose.
I will say that one really neat thing I thought, and for Julie, she was kind of targeting wanting those parents to be involved with their children. However, what I witnessed was I saw those parents becoming friends with other parents. They were establishing a network, a community. And some of them, we had all levels of socioeconomics in that room. And so it was really neat to see them all talking together. And what I witnessed through the summer was, at the beginning, the first week, the parents sat with their kids and didn't interact with other parents. And by the end of the program, the parents would come in and they would say, hey! And they were planning to go to the pool together afterwards with their kids. So it was building that relationship piece, which I think is really neat. If you look at the numbers, CUNC in June, just in our site, because we had the 2 sites, we had the school and the church. We had 533 kids in June, 247 in July. Notice in August how far it dropped. It was only open a few days in August. But as long as there's a kids program and Bible school, the kids are already at the church, or they're coming for classes. And so we had much more participation during those weeks. And then in August, nothing like that's going on at the church. And so the fair is over, families are gone on vacation, they're starting to think about school, so the numbers drop off. And that's been very typical all 3 years. And then the summer school, they had 702. So all total, look how many children were provided free lunches. So that's really, I think, a great partnership. So with that, I will finish, and I will hand it over to Julie, and she'll tell you more about her early childhood grant.
Thank you. Okay, so before I start on that, one of the things that I think, Donna, I just wanted to point out was one of the scriptures that seems to help me a lot is Zechariah 4:10. It says, do not despise the small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. And so when we started the summer diner 3 years ago, it was not going well. And so you have to go back and look at what did not work and why didn't it work and what do we need So those opportunities that aren't working, that doesn't mean that they won't work. What it means is you have new challenges to look forward to, how to make it happen, and who do we need to get involved, and how can we serve our community better, and how can we get reach those people that really need it the most. And we still have a lot of work to do in that area because we do not have those kids right across the street and their families coming as much as we would like for them to. So that's our challenge for this year. Another scripture that I always stand on is in Matthew that says, when you do this unto the least of these, you do it unto me. And so even though it might not be who we want it to be, it's still a work, and it's still God's work. So whenever we're serving, especially these young ones and their families. One of the things that we did this year was the Soaring Back to School. And the goal here was to shine the light on communities. If you notice in our title, part of it said, from silos to strategies. Now, what do y'all know about silos? Excuse me, they store grain, okay? All right. So do they have windows? No. Do they usually stand alone? Or sometimes there might be several of them in a row, but they aren't connected, right? And so this is sometimes what we see in our communities. And just like with the summer diner, we weren't getting all of the components or all of the things. Like we were using the summer diner, the community garden really to pour into that. We weren't using the school system at first or the hot lunches at first. And so as we began to look at those things, you have to look outside of your resources and look at the other silos that are right next door to you, and what can you do to tear that down, or to at least open a window or build a window so that you can see what they have to offer, rather than standing there going, we can't do this. How can we do this together in our communities? How can the faith-based reach over and grab hands with the community? So this was the beginnings of our thinking on the Soaring Back to School. We wanted to provide backpacks for kids through our early childhood grant, and to reach those families, to show them what are some resources in our community that you are not familiar with, that because we know that isolation component that Justin was speaking about, how real that is for some families, that they don't really know that there is a early Head Start program that they can get access to for their kiddos. They don't know that we have a Genesis food bank, and if they don't have enough food, that they can go to that resource. And you guys think about how many things in your community are actually available, but that families don't know about it. And so they feel stuck. They feel like they're in a silo and nobody is reaching out to them. And even if you're in a church and you do one thing for them a year, is that helping them to know what their resources are? So one of the things that we are working on is trying to get a spreadsheet that talks about what all is available and how they can access that. And of course, our medical and the health department are both working on those things. So we decided to do a Soaring Back to School. We set up a tent. I'll just get to the nitty-gritty because Travis is rushing me along. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So we decided we were going to set up this day, and so we set up a tent, and we had tables, And so we advertised it, come and get your school supplies. And so for each one of the community services that agreed to come, we let them pass out one of the things that the kids could have in their backpack. So they had to go to these different places. So Genesis was there, and Donna helped with that as well. And they passed out snacks too, which the kids loved. And they gave them a brochure that told them about what they needed to do to get food supplies that they needed. Okay, and then we had the early Head Start, and they handed out brochures on what to do, and they had supplies. And then we had the library, and they set up the Dolly Parton Imagination Station, and had that available for people to sign up, but also to get a library card, so they had them fill out the forms for library cards, because sometimes we didn't just do this for, it was whoever in the community wanted to come. So we had kids all the way up, and of course one of the drawing points was we had bouncy houses, and told them all these fun things that they were going to get to do as well. And so, so there they are. There's Early Head Start, and there's Donna passing out supplies, and then we had, we passed out a book. We got books for each one of the kiddos. And we had different age levels of books for them to pick from, and just had them sitting there. The librarian came, and and that way too, they're making connections. And another great point was, like Donna was talking earlier, those parents. We had some people that were new in the community, and we were able to get them plugged in to meeting other people, like in the school system, and so on. So it was a great way to connect. We had Livewell in Northwest Kansas, and they had their sign-up for the Nurturing Parenting class. So this was another cross-community type of activity that we did, where we promoted the nurturing. Is anybody, what? He'll talk about that. Okay, so anyway, we had a big sign-up, and they were there at the church, and that is where we did, at that particular church, it's where I go, but we do a Wednesday meal, and so it was a natural fit, because these families, it's developing those kind of core families to work with each other. But it's not core families, but it's kind of the beginnings of that possibility. And then the health department was there. They passed out thermometers and also talked to parents about immunization and the change in immunization. And so that was the Soaring Back to School activity. And so it was a big success. We were able to, it wasn't as big as we thought it was going to be, so now we have leftover for next year, but we were able to give like 125 backpacks to kids, plus all their supplies, and then we also distributed backpacks to St. Francis to give to the foster kids, and then we had some people in another community that said, a church that said, hey, we've got some families, and so we distributed more. So it was an awesome opportunity to knock down some silos, to shine the light on our community services for families, and to say to them, we are here to support you. We want you to be successful. We want to help to make your children enjoy learning, and we did haircuts. I don't suggest that. And it was something, but we won't go into that. But there was lines, and there was the bouncy houses, but we also served food. Food's always a good connector, because you have people sitting and enjoying each other's company and making those connections as well. So that was, and this is the family nights that Travis is going to talk a little bit more about. But I do want to say, one of the things, and if you're working with your community, and when I started this job, I was like so overwhelmed. Where do I begin with trying to connect our what we need for our young children, with what can we do that's going to make a difference. And so the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And how do you take faith initiative steps? One step at a time. But we know that we have a resource in our Heavenly Father to pray and to have hope for our future. And so we have to hang on to that, because when you look at those statistics like we saw this morning, it can be very daunting. And so it's one family at a time, one child at a time. Those are the fights that we get to take in those grassroots initiatives in your communities, and not to lose hope in looking at the big picture, but to look in the eyes of each one of those kiddos or those families that are looking to you for that hope. So thank you.
All right, so I've been tasked with pulling all of this together into a neat bow. I think I heard that term earlier. So I've been in my position for just a little over a year, and our organization historically, since 2001, has hosted nurturing parenting classes, which are essentially, it's a seven-week program, all curriculum based, where we've talked to parents about discipline and managing self, very structured curriculum. And when I came on board, we had just so happened started to work on some initiatives around health equity. So how can we elevate everyone into the community into the same level of living a happy, healthy life? And so one day, I pulled the staff together and I said, what can we do to make nurturing parenting classes something that goes on beyond that 7-week period? How can we connect parents? How can we make sure that they leave that feeling supported? Because as a region, what we were looking at, and why the first plenary was so important, was social isolation. We're seeing a lot of parents, community members that were quite frankly alone, and we were trying to figure out how to reach those parents. At the same time, a lot of our initiatives were focused on what was happening from birth to 5. So how can we make those changes there? And really, it all starts with the family. So I pulled the staff together, and it was about that time that this force of nature named Julie Ross came through our doors too, and got us to think a little bit more. And that's where we began to connect with the faith community. How could we're meeting these families where they're at. That's where they come every Wednesday night. Let's totally redo this program to meet their needs. And so I come from a leadership development background, and so I turn to Kansas Leadership Center principles. I think whenever I look at any initiative, and so I applied it to this as well. And as we were putting together what this could look like, we thought of these 4 competencies. Which, how many of you went through KLC training before? See some hands up, great. So we follow those. Anyone can do it anytime and anywhere. And it starts with you. You need to engage others. The purpose must be clear. And that last point, it's risky. We didn't know how these parenting classes were going to go with this new format. And as we were talking about it, we started to put together a curriculum, but then we decided to, what we call play it by ear. We decided to meet the parents where they were at and basically redo the curriculum based on their needs as we go along. I want to go past that now for a little bit when I was talking about how we connect the dots. So the first part was the partnership with the faith community. Prior to this, we'd always worked in the schools. We'd always had a class in the fall. We had a class in the spring. And this time, working with Julie, we were able to connect Wednesday nights with how would you define that? The family nights each Wednesday. And then we also integrated leadership competencies. with, like I mentioned earlier, we wanted to build that relationship with the parents. And so we started talking about managing self and diagnosing the situation. And when you're a parent that is experiencing some of the trauma that our parents in that class were doing, how successful do you think we were by starting off with talking about those things? We weren't. So after we had the first session, we went back to the office and we talked a little bit more about how we could make this work. And what we found as we did that first initial activities with them was that in order for them to be better parents, to be more involved in the community, there was a lot of work around managing self that had to happen. And that involved getting into some really tough issues, so tough that at times I would be on my 30-minute commute back to Atwood. Personally, I would be really just emotionally drained, hearing all of these stories and hearing these experiences. But we were meeting them where they're at, which was really important. We also had a focus on health equity. So we really this was a group of usually they could be 1 or 2 parent households, 4 to 5 children. But we were trying to reach a group of parents that aren't normally involved in the community. We have folks like Donna and Julie who are involved in everything when it comes to community work. And we really wanted to try to reach in and see if we could pull in this group, and instead of making decisions for them, have them inform us on what they needed. And so that was the big focus here. And then the last part, sustainability. This is the part where it kind of tugs at your heartstrings a little bit. When we started, what we began to notice from the first session to maybe the 5th was that the parents were starting to make connections outside of our time together. So they were exchanging phone numbers, they were getting together for play dates with their kids. They were helping one parent that was having a significant problem with their child, behavioral problems. They were all coming together to help this woman. We saw a transformational change happen, and we saw relationship begin to happen. So not only with each other, but I think as facilitators of the program, we started to have a relationship as well. And it was really impactful. Not just for them, but for me personally, it was a really good experience. And they're still meeting. We had 7 weeks. They're still there every Wednesday meeting, and they're still inviting us back, which was kind of the indicator for me that we had made some progress. Something else we started doing, we integrated into the parenting programs was, as we tried to reach these families that we normally don't reach, we wanted to hear more of their stories. And this project was probably one of the most, all these projects are really important, but again, this one really tugged at my heartstrings because we started to get to the heart of what was driving some of the poor health outcomes in our community and what was impacting especially children with whom we were working with. And so we partnered with KBU, Center for Public Partnership and Research, and we integrated their storytelling mechanism, but it's a survey tool, into our work. And really what it did, it allowed students, or parents rather, to tell their stories. So they could sit down, tell their stories, and we could really begin to pinpoint where those needs were. And we heard about social determinants of health earlier, behavioral health. We heard stories that talked about suicide. We heard stories about farming families that were trying to live on incomes of $20,000 to $30,000 a year for a family of 5. We heard stories about, I remember this story from a particular farmer who he would come home in the evening and he would lay his head on his wife's shoulder and he would say, "How are we going to get through the next day?" we were hearing those types of stories. And so we integrated that into our nurturing parenting program to give the parents those opportunities to tell that story. And also, I just put this link up here because anyone in this room can tell a story, and you know, for me, I filled out a story. It was a good way for people to talk about, you know, something that was really close and important to them without, you know, feeling like they had to get out there and tell their story in front of everyone. Kind of back in here. You know, just a little bit about organization. You know, we have our hands in a lot of things, but I want us to get down to that last bullet point, which is, you know, building a foundation for children and families through strong families, healthy development, and early learning. And I think what our partnership here really encapsulates is, and you may find this in many of your regions or communities, but as Julie mentioned, and that's why we put silos, there are so many silos in communities where organizations, community members, they're afraid to lose something, whether that's, you know, funding or possibly recognition or something that prevents organizations from working together. And what this showed right here, and it really happened, I would say, organically. You know, it wasn't something we planned to do, but all of us, the school district, our organization, the Methodist Church, we all broke down those silos to work together so we could make a positive impact on the people that we were trying to reach. So that's the success of this story. Anything that okay?
Yeah.
I'm a lot of pressure. But thank you. And I think we have a little bit of time here for questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just because I've been involved in our Tomorrow's Project as well.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to, and maybe I just need to do more research on my end, but from your own personal link, are you able to review those stories through KU yet, or?
Yes, so they go to KU,
Great.
and then we meet with their team on a periodic basis where they're able to go through the stories. For this particular situation, we had, and Julie, I think you were there. We could see something. You may have been. I can't remember. They schedule what they call a sense-making event, where we were able to look at the stories from the region and begin to make some, or see some general themes about, you know, what was happening. A lot of stories around mental health was the biggest one, and also financial stress was probably the second biggest one. But what we're going to do with CPPR this spring is we're actually going to host some individual sense-making sessions in the county, because there were a few counties in northwest Kansas, including Thomas, Rollins, Cheyenne, Sherman, that corner quadrant, that provided a lot of stories, some even more than urban areas. So we want to make sure that, you know, we take a deeper dive into those.
Address their needs.
Yeah.
So will you continue, are you still continuing to take stories and helping that with programming?
Yeah.
For your individual agency?
We've integrated this into our work. Like we try to do with all our initiatives, we integrated it so it's there. And so we have it on our website. It's always open. And
Good to know. Just helps in the future.
yeah.
I have a question about your story for school. We do something similar in Manhattan. We call it Everybody Counts. And I know they've done some haircuts, and I was just curious, why did you say the haircuts was a bad idea?
Well, it was difficult to get enough hairdressers, and so, because, you know, it just was. And so then you have a long line of people, and so, you know, whenever you have long lines, people get frustrated, and they aren't as happy when they leave if they have to be in line for a long time. What was a blessing was that I had gotten some hairdressers that weren't able to be there, and I said, would you be willing to do a certificate
Yeah, vouchers.
or voucher, yeah, and have them come there? And so we had several of those, and so when the line Other questions? Yeah.
Can you go back to, can you identify a person or a group that did the initial breaking down of the silos, that took the steps to, you may have said that and I probably just missed it, but can you point to,
No.
this is when it
I
broke?
think it's like Travis said, it was kind of an organic thing. And here's, when you begin to see, we shouldn't be overlapping. It's like one of the people that were at the Soaring Back to School was the early childhood. And she came, the early Head Start. And she came up to me and said, hey, can we get together and talk about how we can work together? Okay, so I didn't know Connie, but now we have a relationship. And so it's where you begin to see those things. And like Travis said, it's kind of it organically happens. If we are willing to just let down our guards a little bit and look at everybody else's assets and not feel like we're competing. It's kind of Matthew was saying earlier, I had written this down, that we look at each other's assets and look at the things that we're already doing and then partner with them to better each other. So we will better all of us together.
I will say one, reoccurring theme throughout, and I don't think Julie gives herself enough credit, but, Julie, through an act of leadership, sought out, our organization. I mean, she came into the office, we sat down and talked how we could partner. And in the same way, our organization, which is regional, but, we had to say, you know what, we need to partner to make this work because we can't do it on our own. So I think there were two things that happened. One, you had a leader in the community who came in and said, hey, we need to do something. And then you had our organizations which were saying, you know what, we need to see how we can partner to make this all work. So I think two things happened there that made this successful.
And I also would say that you have to be willing to ask people to do things, just like in our local churches. Right now, recently we've had our liturgist position and people that have been ushering are all slowly dying off. They're getting older or they're moving. And so our pool was getting smaller and smaller. And everyone was lamenting, oh, I have to usher every third Sunday. And finally someone said, this is silly. So first I put out a call. Anyone who wants to usher, please let us know. Well, you can guess how many people let them know. Very few. So then we had to have someone that went out and said, hey, we need you, can you usher? And once we did that, people were willing to step up and do it. So I think you do need someone like Travis or Julie that's willing to go ask someone to do something. Because just expecting them to do it, they probably won't. Because they're all busy. So just be willing to ask too, I think. Any other questions?
One other thing I would highlight, kind of to add on to that, is that I think, at least in this space that we're learning, is that the school districts are trying to engage in a different way with the early childhood. It's becoming more and more prominent specifically. So I think that's another thing that's happened, and the schools haven't fully been engaged with the early childhood in the same way. And so I think it's a new partnership that we haven't experienced before. So I think that's another one, and then it brings a whole different set of resources for people to look at too. So I think that was another key piece, is that you were in a different role, and it was specifically in the early childhood part of that. So that might be another one that I think was helpful. Otherwise, okay, with that, if we don't have any other questions, let's go ahead and close. Thank you guys so much.
That was a presentation on the importance of connecting community organizations to improve early childhood programs. You're watching Salina Media Connection.